Hi, my name's Sophie and welcome to Sophie Knits Daily. Today I have a bit of a different video for you. I am going to take you on a little travel vlog, knitting vlog around Norway. For those of you who don't know, I'm currently travelling around in my VW Caddy camper van, and we've been travelling now for a few months. We spent a month in Scotland, a month in Ireland, just around a month in the south of England, and now we've come across to mainland Europe. We've driven through Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands and Denmark and Sweden, and now we're finally in Norway, which was our final destination. We arrived in Norway last night and we're now driving between Oslo and Bergen, and we needed a bit of a break, stretch our legs. There's been a lot of driving over the past week and some of it's been fairly difficult because we've been in a van with no air conditioning, sometimes in around 30 degrees. So we needed a little break and we've stopped in a little town that has 2 yarn shops. These are the first yarn shops that we've come across since driving into mainland Europe and getting the Eurotunnel across. So I'm very excited to get my yarn fix. I'm in desperate need of some 4mm needles. The first night after getting the Eurotunnel into France, I ended up breaking my 4mm needles. So I'm on the hunt for some 4mm needles and I'm really intrigued to see what they have in a Norwegian yarn shop. So I'll take you round. This yarn shop was called Strikkeglede and it's possibly the busiest yarn shop I have ever been to. Everyone in there was wearing knitwear and the yarn choice in this shop was just incredible. There was every brand you could possibly think of. Issia, Knitting for Olive, Lang Yarns, Raumagarn, Sandasgarn. There was just so much choice and a massive range of colours in each of the yarns. There was lots of yarns that I'd never seen before, like Hillersvåg yarns and some specific Norwegian yarns, so it was very exciting to have a look around. I didn't end up heading to the other yarn shop, but I definitely got my yarn fix from Strikkeglede. So today has been a super long driving day, a beautiful driving day, but pretty long. So I'm happy to just chill here for the night. I'll put in writing where we are because I absolutely cannot pronounce any of the place names that we're going to. But we've been driving towards Bergen today and we've gone through the world's longest tunnel en route to Bergen, and it was just amazing. I heard about this tunnel recently on the No Such Thing as a Fish podcast. I knew that we were coming to Norway and I saw that Norway was in the description of one of the podcasts and clicked on it. And the facts about the tunnel are that it's over 20 kilometers long, and there was some concerns when they were building the tunnel that people driving through the tunnel will get tired or a bit kind of confused because of the monotonous driving through the tunnel and the repetitive lights that you're going past in the dark environment. So the people who built the tunnel spoke to some psychologists to figure out how they could stop people from going a little crazy in the middle of the tunnel. And the psychologists suggested that the people building the tunnel put in breaks during the tunnel that look like you're coming out of a tunnel and then going back in. So every 6 kilometers or so, there were these crazy lights. It felt like we were going into an aquarium that kind of broke up the tunnel. And I don't think it worked, but it did make going through the tunnel a bit more exciting. And it definitely broke up the repetitiveness of the tunnel, so that was fun. Coming out of the tunnel, we've driven up a huge mountain pass and had an incredible view of a Norwegian fjord on the route up to the mountain pass. It is just so beautiful and I feel like we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg of what Norway has to offer, so I'm super excited to do more of the west coast and possibly head up to the Lofoten Islands. So we're stopping the night here at the top of this mountain pass and we're going to be doing a hike early tomorrow morning, so this is the perfect place to stay. It's amazing seeing so much snow still around here. I haven't seen snow for such a long time, so that's fun. And although it's snowy, it's not particularly cold. I'm pretty comfortable sat here in my jumper and linen trousers, and I'm going to be doing some knitting outside, I think, so I'll show you what I'm going to get up to. So I did successfully manage to pick up some 4mm interchangeable Knit Pro needles. This is the first interchangeable needle set I ever bought and the only interchangeable needle set I have, and I went for Knit Pro because it was a bit cheaper, but I absolutely love these wooden needles and I feel like you can pick up Knit Pro needles anywhere. They did also sell Chalgu needles in this shop, and I see Chalgu needles probably almost as much as I see Knit Pro needles, but other needle brands I don't tend to see so often, so very, very happy that I have a Knit Pro needles. I wanted to pick these up as I need to do a gauge swatch for the Skye sweater by Second Knit that I plan on casting on. I'll just get the yarn. So if you haven't seen my latest knitting podcast, it might not be the latest, but podcast episode 6, then I'm going to use these 2 yarns to make the Skye sweater by Second Knit. It's Mindful Fraya, 100% wool, and it's 50 grams to 350 meters, and I'll be holding each of the colours double. I'm going to use the blue for the main colour and the sand melange, a kind of like beigey, purpley tinted beige for the stripes. So I need to do a gauge swatch, and I'm really hoping this works for the Skye sweater because I have firm plans of kind of making this work and knitting that up. So that's my first plan for the evening. So my second plan for the evening is to do some spinning on my drop spindle. I joined the virtual open mill weekend from John Arbon Textiles yesterday, I think it was, and I joined a talk by Amanda Hannaford, and it was drop spindles for beginners, and I learned so much in that talk. So I've been desperate to get my drop spindle back out and do some spinning and kind of use the tips that she kind of provided during that talk. So I'm using the Inspiring Yarns mixed breeds set, and I have 20 grams of lots of different, I think all British breeds, and there's a label that tells you what all the different breeds are, but it doesn't specify on the actual wool tops what each of them are. So going off colour and feel from what I can see the descriptions to be online, I think this is the white Polworth sheep, and it's really, really soft, seems to be spinning up very well, and I think all of my tips are working, so I'm happy with how this is going. It's quite like mindful and is a fun activity to do outside. So yeah, my plan for the evening, very fun. I have so much to catch you up on from the past few days. When heading down the mountain pass that we stayed in, that you saw on the last clip, we headed to Stegastein viewpoint, which is an incredible viewpoint over a fjord in Norway. The walkway was actually kind of scary because it bent over at the edge and it had a kind of glass wall there, so it looked like you could kind of lean right over the side, which yeah, was a little bit scary, especially if you don't like heights. The views all around were absolutely breathtaking, and it also really helped us kind of get our bearings as to where we were and where we'd driven through and where we were heading next. We then headed through the valley past a village called Flåm, and we headed to a kind of lay-by where we parked up for a couple of days under an incredible waterfall. This whole valley was absolutely beautiful. The river running through was ice blue and also ice cold, and it was just so incredible and peaceful and such an amazing environment to be able to live in for a couple of days. Our first day here was pretty chill, and it was where I was able to do my gauge swatch with my 4mm needles for my Skye sweater by Second Knit. So my gauge swatch on 4mm needles, which is what's recommended in the pattern, ended up being a bit tight. I really love the colour and how this is worked up, but the gauge is a bit tight and I can feel that in the fabric being a bit tight. So I went up to 4.5mm needles, which is a bit frustrating because I could have probably just done that without kind of panicking about getting some 4mm needles, but I think I will need those 4mm for the ribbing, so they will come in handy at some point. I've made a bit of progress on the Skye sweater, so I'll give you a little glimpse pre-podcast, a little sneak peek. I'm starting with the blue. I want the blue to be the main colour, and then this kind of sand is going to be the stripes, and it's working up really quickly. I absolutely love this yarn. I would go as far as saying it's possibly one of my favourite yarns I've ever used. It's super soft, but it also has a grippiness and stickiness that the 100% wool kind of provides, and the colour is just beautiful. It feels amazing. The stitch definition is lovely. It's really elastic and kind of stretchy to work with. So yeah, having such an enjoyable experience with this. I got pretty obsessed my first day just chilling underneath that magical waterfall that I've knit up quite a bit, and having a lot of fun doing it. On the second day that we were parked here, we went for a little walk along the valley and came across a stall outside someone's house, just kind of on the side of the road, labelled handmade knits. And across the stall there were so many different absolutely incredible handmade knits. They were all pretty reasonably priced. I did notice a few patterns in there that I recognised, like the anchor sweater by Petite Knit, and there was also lots of beautiful colour work. There were mittens, there was hats, there was slippers, socks, jumpers. Oh, it was just so lovely, and I really haven't gone looking at all or gone out of my way to find knitted items or yarn shops. I feel like there's just such a knitting culture here that knitting stuff is just everywhere, so I really enjoyed having a look through all of the different handmade knits here. As you can probably see from the footage of this valley that we were in, the river was really fast. There were a few signs up saying not to swim because the currents were so quick, but there was, I don't know if it was man-made or if it was kind of just what the river had done itself, like on a meander. There was a slow point of the river that was kind of sheltered by rocks, so we had to take a dip. We actually went for a swim maybe 2-3 times a day. We even went in the rain, which I think is just the most beautiful experience, swimming in the rain. The water is ice cold. I hope that comes across in the footage, how cold the water is. But I've done a fair few cold dips over the past couple of years, so I feel like I've really worked my way up to doing this super ice cold dip in Norway. So today we were driving out of our absolutely beautiful park up in the valley, and we're driving back through the village of Flåm, and I saw another yarn shop. Like, I can't stress enough how it wasn't planned. There is literally just yarn shops everywhere, and again, had to have a look in. This yarn shop was called Huldra, and it was a yarn shop and gift shop. There were lots of really cute kind of aesthetic gifty items. There was handmade knits, and there was also loads of yarn. Again, I had such an amazing time having a look around all the yarn. There was lots of Stegastein and Hillesvag, but I'm kind of reluctant to get any yarn because I have so much yarn, and also I'm really hoping to go to some of the factories like the Stegastein factory and the Hillesvag factory, so I'm kind of waiting to see the prices of their factory offcuts or like sample pieces. But I have been on the lookout for some buttons which I managed to find in Huldra. So the buttons are for my Claire vest by Moki Knits. I talked about this being a plan on my last knitting podcast, and I said I was probably not going to start knitting it until the height of summer when it was super hot. But the moment we left England to come to mainland Europe, we were driving in a heat wave, and I was so hot I couldn't work on wool. I just wanted to have a summer fibre in my hands, so I started on this Claire vest, which is knit with 100% linen, the Isle Hor organic, and it's been really enjoyable to knit in the hot weather. Haven't been knitting on it as much now we're in Norway because it's not particularly hot, but I made a fair amount of progress on the journey to Norway. So I'll talk more about kind of the pattern and how I've been finding the pattern on my knitting podcast, but this is what I was looking for some buttons to go with. The colour of yarn is a kind of oatmeal-y beigey colour, and I really like the buttons that Moki Knits has in her pattern photos. They're a irregular shaped kind of white button, but her yarn is a little bit lighter than mine. So these are the buttons that I ended up going for. I'm not sure how to describe these because I'm actually not quite sure what the material is. It feels maybe a bit plasticky because it's not very like cold to the touch, and it kind of like makes that plasticky noise, but regardless, I think the look of them is really beautiful. It kind of gives that shiny mother of pearl on one side, but the other side looks like maybe little bits of straw, mixed in, and I think that kind of straw-like look goes really well with the linen. I think they look really, really beautiful paired together, and I'll put some clips in so you can see it a bit closer. But I'm super happy to find these. I've said before in videos that I really like looking out for some maybe cheaper but also kind of memorable pieces in yarn shops on my travels, because really I can't be buying everything and I can't have a super large yarn stash that it doesn't fit in the roof box of the van. So little kind of mementos and memories picked up along the way are lovely. So our journey from that yarn shop to where we are now was pretty interesting. We drove by a huge waterfall that was somewhat touristy, so we weren't there for very long, and the waterfall was huge and you got covered in the spray from the waterfall, which was pretty cool. We then drove through many tunnels, which we've driven through loads of tunnels to get here, but this tunnel was different from the rest, that there was a roundabout in the tunnel, something I've never seen before, something that maybe people from Norway watching this video will think that's not interesting at all, but I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And now we're here with this amazing view of Hardangerfjord. Sorry if I'm butchering that. We've parked here for the night because we've booked into a sauna early tomorrow morning. So I'm going to do some spinning here tonight, maybe knit up on my Kai sweater, and I'm very excited to head to the sauna tomorrow. The sauna was amazing. It was a floating sauna on the Fjord, and I actually didn't realise it was floating until a boat went past and created loads of waves, and then we were inside the sauna thinking, why on earth is this thing rocking? But yeah, it was a floating sauna, and we managed to be the only 2 people there, so private sauna, and it was self-service, so we got to kind of fire the wood burner up ourselves and get the sauna as hot as we liked, which was so nice because my boyfriend doesn't like things too hot. I feel like I can deal with a bit of a hot sauna, but we were able to get the temperature right for the both of us. We alternated from being in the hot sauna and then jumping in the fjord to cool down, and it was just such a magical experience. The fjord was absolutely beautiful, the water is crystal clear, and I just had a really great time. We then moved to this spot where we've been for the past few days on the Fensfjorden. It's been pretty hot over the past couple of days, so we just wanted to be in a beautiful spot on the fjord where we could swim and just chill and relax. It's been kind of upwards of 30 degrees, which is pretty hot I think for Norway, but definitely the hottest it's been in Norway since we've been here. Sorry about the quick change, the sun was in my eyes and my Ebba was getting far too hot, but that's been a pretty common theme over the past few days, being too hot, and it's been far too hot to knit most of the day, during the middle of the day anyway. So I've been reading. I used to read a lot. I used to read like maybe 100 books a year, and I'd have a huge stack of books on my bookshelf, but since knitting more, I haven't really been reading so much anymore, which has been a shame, and I need to make it a goal to try and read a bit more. I think I used to read so much because I had such a huge bookshelf and I'd feel kind of that pressure to read the books. I really try and want to try and be more minimal, but when I'm going charity shopping and finding books for 50p, I just have to buy them because they're there and they're 50p, and then I end up with far more than I can consume. And so that's why I would read so much, is to try and get through the books that I have. But that's kind of transferred into knitting now, where I have a bit of a yarn stash and more yarn than I can just consume right this second. So I feel that pressure now to knit up with my yarn stash, and because all of my books are in boxes, I don't feel that kind of pressure, or it's not like a visible kind of cue to read, to kind of get those books out of my home and sight. And having books on my Kindle, you just can't see how many books you have, so there isn't kind of that pressure there. And the Kindle's the only thing that I've brought with me. I haven't brought any physical books, but just because I can't see them doesn't mean that I shouldn't be reading them. So yeah, reading is going to be a bit more of a goal of mine over this trip. And the book that I've been reading is Abroad in Japan by Chris Broad. I have a pretty bad habit of not reading any of the blurbs of books before buying them and jumping into reading them. I do badly kind of go off the artwork and just the title of the book. I do judge a book by its cover as such, and so I didn't know that Chris Broad was a YouTuber and had a YouTube channel, and that's kind of what brought about the book. And I kind of do wish I knew that before going into it, and I'll explain why. So the book is very light-hearted and quite conversational, and it does offer descriptions of Japanese culture and landscapes in a very relatable but not overly descriptive way that's engaging, and it's a really easy read. I've read 50% without even trying. But it is about Chris's experience in Japan as an English-speaking teacher who can't speak very much Japanese. So it's very much his experience being a fish out of water when kind of entering into Japan and Japanese culture, and it's very heavy on the teaching and teaching stories, which aren't so interesting for me. I'm enjoying the book, and I can see that it's an interesting book to people who are a fan of him, but having not known who he is and not being a fan of him, I think I'd rather read a book that offers more of an insight into Japanese culture, maybe from a Japanese person rather than an English person entering Japan and kind of their first few months there. But that is just a personal preference. When it has got a bit cooler here in the evenings, I've been able to do some knitting and just kind of comment about the evenings here. They are so long. We are quite far north, not as north as I plan on heading to, but quite far north. And the sun starts setting at about 11 p.m. and doesn't really get dark until about 12. We get maybe an hour of a beautiful sunset each night, and then it gets light again at about 4:30 in the morning. So the day's really long and the nights are really short, and that does kind of mess up your sleeping because it doesn't get dark. You don't start to feel tired. So we've been going to bed pretty late and then getting up pretty late as we've been pretty tired. But it's meant that I've had a bit of knitting time in the evenings when it's been cooler. And on the hotter days, the things that I've been most keen to work on is summer fibres. This Bridget bag is now finished. This was kind of my mindless project on the hot days, as all I really had left to do was the I-cord. I must have done 2.5 meters of I-cord on this bag, and that's kind of my suggestion. If you're really hot and kind of overwhelmed, knit an I-cord. It's mindless. So this is a little sneak peek of what the bag looks like. I do have quite a lot of comments, and not all positive comments about this pattern, but I'll go into more detail on all of those things on my knitting podcast. But overall thoughts are that I'm really happy with the bag. It's come out a bit small because I didn't do a gauge swatch, so it's definitely more of a summer handbag than a summer tote bag, but I still really like the look of it, and I particularly like the colour of this. So yesterday was the Wimbledon final, which I've been so excited about. We've watched so much tennis on our trip so far. We watched all of the Roland Garros, Queen's, and then all of Wimbledon. So I was excited to see the final, and we didn't want to move from this spot at all in the run up to the final because we wanted to be settled with some popcorn, some nice drinks. So I needed something to keep me entertained during the day in the lead up. As a side note, I'm quite an Alcaraz fan. I love watching Alcaraz on the court. He throws some super interesting shots, and he's just really entertaining to watch. So I was rooting for an Alcaraz win. So a bit disappointing that Sinner won over Alcaraz, but Sinner played a great game, so it was well deserved. So the thing that kept me entertained in the run up to the Wimbledon final is the Aggie the Sheep pattern in Mooch and Friends book. The pattern is quite complex. There's a lot involved in making each of the characters. There's a lot of different steps, and I think the pattern for each character takes up like 10-12 pages, so it was definitely something to keep me very occupied and focused on. I managed to finish just the head of my Aggie the Sheep toy, so this is what I've got so far. Not the easiest thing to show you, and it looks, I don't know, a bit weird without the stuff in it, and I've got little markers for where the eyes and the ears are going to be. But I think the pattern is absolutely genius. I don't know how someone can come up with such a complex pattern. It involves loads of shaping and short rows and kind of, knit two togethers and things, so it's just genius. I particularly like the little garter stitch over her head, which I think is really sweet and adds to the curly kind of sheep look. And I would have loved to do more of this yesterday, but I realised that I don't have any safety eyes, and I need to put the safety eyes on before I move on to the next part, because I don't think I'll be able to kind of get back to the underside of the fabric to put the safety eyes in properly. So I've put the sheep on pause for now, and I'm going to look out for some safety eyes from whatever craft yarn haberdashery shops we come across. So the plan for today is to head to Hillesvåg shop, and I really wanted to do a factory tour there, but when looking at booking it in, the machines aren't running for most of July over kind of the summer period, and I just didn't think it would be kind of as immersive or interesting without the machines running and to be able to see kind of how the yarn is produced through the machines. So I'm not doing the factory tour. I've just done the John Arbon Mill factory tour, so I assume the machinery will be like fairly similar and kind of a similar process, but we're still going to head over to the shop to see what they have there. I've seen on some pictures that they have a lot of wool top for spinning, and I'm super interested in getting some of that because I've been enjoying using my drop spindle, as you've seen in a few different clips. But I also haven't really come across Hillesvåg yarn in UK yarn shops before. I've seen it in a couple of the yarn shops we've been to here, so I'm intrigued to see kind of what's in their range of yarns. I particularly liked their colours when I've seen them in the shops, so yeah, I'm interested to take you round, and it's going to be a good day. Hillesvåg ended up being a lovely little shop. As you went in downstairs, they had on display their whole range of yarns, and the first thing I noticed was their colours were really beautiful. They all seemed to be kind of quite like earthy, natural colours. They were bright, not too muted, a lot of them, but felt very reflective of Norway, the landscapes like the greens and the blues, and Norwegian houses, which I absolutely love, in kind of terracotta and mustard colours. I don't know if you can see the little Norwegian house that's behind me, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. All their yarns that I felt as well felt really woolly. They had that kind of slight rustic, woolly, waxy feel to them, which was really nice. The main thing I noticed about the downstairs was how many samples they had. They had so many different knitted samples, and also a changing room where you could try the samples on, which was great to kind of get a feel of how the pattern would look on you, but also to get a feel of how the wool and the yarn would feel against your skin, and if it's kind of like a woolliness that you could tolerate. So that was good. I didn't try on any samples, but I took note of a few patterns that I absolutely love. Sorry if you can hear any ringing. There's some sheep just behind me, and they've got little bells on. They are so cute. They came right up to the van before and were really curious as to what we were doing, maybe because we just had some dinner and they could smell our food. But yeah, it's so adorable. So I really liked the look of the jewel number 7, which you can find on Hillesvåg's website, and I especially like the look of the Eftura number 1, which is a collaboration between Augustins and Hillesvåg. It felt very similar in style to the Northern Augustins number 8, I think it is. What I love most about this jumper was the kind of colour work pattern, but also the double folded hem at the bottom and double folded ribs at the sleeves is something I haven't seen before in a garment, and I really liked the look and the feel of it, so it's something that I'll try in a future knit. I do really want to knit this pattern, but I didn't like the look of the collar. I felt like it sat really high up and kind of looked bulky and boxy and not quite how I like collars to fit on my jumpers. So I think in future I will knit this style of colour work, but I'll incorporate it into a jumper pattern that I know and love, like the Monday sweater by Petite Knit, for example. I've knit that one twice, so I kind of know how the pattern works, and I feel like it'd be quite easy to sub in the colour work. And actually, to touch a bit more on the kind of collaboration patterns, this is something I didn't know before. I know it's quite common for yarn companies to collaborate with different designers, but I didn't know Hillesvåg yarn before coming to Norway. It's not one that I come across before, so I didn't know to look on their website to have a look at their patterns and collaborations, and I'm very glad to have found that now because there's so many beautiful patterns on there, and the patterns aren't too expensive from what I can see, and it can also kind of link you to their yarns if you wanted to try their yarns. So yeah, that's something to have a look into. So the thing I was looking forward to the most about visiting Hillesvåg factory is to see their kind of prices and if there was any kind of factory sample outlet prices, and I was slightly disappointed in this sense. Downstairs, all of their yarns were 10% off the retail price, which I don't feel like is a massive saving, if I'm honest. When I went onto their website to have a look at patterns, they were offering 10% off on your first order, so I feel like that's kind of a discount you could get fairly easily anyway. And then upstairs they had a very, very small selection of yarns that were 50% off, and I was very intrigued by a brown yarn of theirs in this 50% off range, but I think really I was probably more intrigued by the price than the yarn. And this is something that I'm trying to keep in mind with kind of not buying too much yarn or yarn beyond my means. I was telling myself that if this isn't a yarn that I would have picked up at full price on the shelf and absolutely loved and wanted to get, then I probably shouldn't get it just because it's 50% off, especially because I couldn't really think of a pattern to work up with it. As a bit of a spoiler, I didn't buy any skeins of yarn from Hillersvag because I think I'm a bit too much in the summer knitting zone at the moment, and I can't really think of any patterns that really inspire me that I could knit up in proper woolly wool. Maybe if I was visiting this shop in the winter months I would be absolutely desperate to get some woolly wool, but visiting right now nothing really inspired me enough to pick it up. Also upstairs though, you could see some of their factory machines, which were really interesting. I did say in a previous clip that they do factory tours and you can visit the factory, see the machines in action and hear more about Hillersvag, but the machines aren't running over the summer period. I think it's just this month of July, so it's not really something that I was kind of interested in going to see. But one of their machines upstairs that I thought was really cool was their huge drum carder. I thought it was really cool being able to see how the wool looked in the barrel kind of before going into the carder and after, and how the kind of colours of the wool before blended, and it was just the biggest carding machine I've ever seen, so that was pretty fun. Also upstairs they had lots of different wool fibre to buy. There was carded and uncarded wool for kind of spinning or felting, and this wool was really cool, but it's not kind of in a form that I've used before for spinning on my drop spindle, and I don't have any hand carders, so I thought it was just a bit too much of a step for me to buy any of that. But I did end up buying some of their merino wool top. So I ended up getting 120 grams of their merino wool top in this really beautiful kind of lime green colour. In the light this wool kind of is quite reflective, almost as though it's got like silk or something in it, but it doesn't, it is just merino wool, so the colour is really pretty. And I've actually already started spinning this on my drop spindle and it's coming out beautifully. It's super soft to spin and it's quite like an easy experience to spin on my drop spindle. I don't know if that's because of the fibre itself or because of some more of the tips that I've used from the Amanda Hannaford chat, which was part of the virtual mill open weekend by John Arbon Textiles. One of the tips that she gave us was, if you have a fibre that's kind of really soft and slippery, to break a bit of the fibre off on the wool top and kind of plump it out and roll it up into what she called faux lags, which is like roll lags but fake roll lags. And this method has been so helpful for spinning up this merino wool. I think I'd really struggle to spin it just in kind of the form that it is, because it is super slippy and all of the fibres are so well aligned that they just kind of like slide off each other. So in the faux lag it's a lot more grippy, so I feel like I can pull the fibre a lot more and get a much thinner yarn and a better, like more even twist by doing it with this faux lag. So yeah, I've really enjoyed spinning this up so far. I didn't quite realise how much 120 grams was, and I think this is going to take me a very long time to spin. So far I've only been spinning 20-gram wool tops at a time, so I've just got to take it slow and steady. I don't know if it's the influence of Tour de Fleece which is making me want to spin so much recently, or if it's just because it's something I'm really enjoying without the influence of Tour de Fleece, but I'm not in any kind of Tour de Fleece groups. It's not something I'd really looked into, but maybe I'll join some groups next year when I've researched it a bit more, because I'm really enjoying spinning recently. So that's pretty much it from the tour of Hillersvag. The day after we went to Hillersvag, we went into Bergen, which has been a destination we've had in mind since coming to Norway. We've really slowly travelled from where you saw me in the first clip to Bergen, where we were a couple of days ago. So getting into Bergen was a lot of fun. Driving into cities in a van is never normally a nice experience. Parking's quite expensive and difficult to find, and the roads are confusing and busy, and you have to worry about tolls and congestion charge charges or clean air zone charges. So a hack that we have when we're living in the van is to park in places that are on a bus or train line to a city, and then get public transport into the city, which is exactly what we did for Bergen. We parked in a town nearby and we got the train in, and public transport in Norway is just so easy and clean and fast, and the training was just really lovely. The weather was on our side, it was nice and warm and sunny, and there was lots to do and see there, including a lot of yarn shops. So look out for a future video where I'll be taking you on a little yarn tour and day exploring Bergen. But just a kind of another quirk to bring you in this video about living in a van is that laundry is an issue. We obviously don't have a washing machine, so we have to find laundrettes, and laundrettes in Norway are very few and far between, and the only one we could find was in Bergen. So we ended up having to take all of our washing into Bergen to do in the laundrette. We were kind of dipping in and out of this laundrette whilst going to yarn shops and sightseeing to get a few washes done and get them in the tumble dryer, and we had to carry around our washing all day, which was heavy, but looking back on the footage looks quite funny carrying lots of bags around. So a disclaimer for the little clips that I'll show you in the yarn shops is that it's not from me buying lots of yarn, it's from the amount of laundry that I had to carry around. And since we reached Bergen, which was my kind of ideal destination at the start of this video, I think I'll end the video here. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do let me know. I know it's kind of a different format from videos that I've done before. It's a bit more kind of travel-y and talkative, so if you like that, do let me know. We're heading up to Trondheim next, and again we're going to be doing kind of a slow travel up there and seeing lots of beautiful places in Norway along the way. So I'd really love to take you along on that trip too, because I've really enjoyed kind of filming these little clips and putting this video together, so I hope you've also enjoyed it. If you have, then please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you again soon.